On the night of April 14th, 1912, the Titanic hit an iceberg and began sinking in the cold Atlantic Ocean. More than 2,200 people were on board, and many were left floating in lifeboats in the freezing water. But help was on the way. A ship called the Carpathia heard the Titanic's distress call and rushed to save the survivors. The Carpathia was a smaller passenger ship owned by the Cunard Line. It was not as big or fancy as the Titanic, but it was strong and reliable. The Carpathia was on its way from New York to Europe, carrying around 700 passengers. It was led by Captain Arthur Rostron, a skilled and respected sailor. On the night of the disaster, most of the crew and passengers were asleep when a radio operator suddenly received a desperate message from the Titanic. The Titanic's call for help came at 12:25 a.m. The message was sent using Morse code, a way to communicate using dots and dashes. The Titanic's operator, Jack Phillips, sent out the letters CQD and SOS, which meant the ship was in serious trouble. Harold Cottam, the Carpathia's radio operator, had just finished his shift and was getting ready for bed when he heard the signal. He quickly ran to tell Captain Rostron, who jumped into action. As soon as Captain Rostron learned about the Titanic, he ordered his crew to change course and head straight for the sinking ship. He also told his engineers to make the ship go as fast as possible. The Carpathia could usually travel at about 14 miles per hour, but with extra effort it sped up to 17 miles per hour. The crew worked quickly, preparing blankets, warm drinks, and space for survivors. Doctors got ready to help anyone who was hurt. Passengers were woken up and asked to give up their cabins for the survivors. It took over 3 hours for the Carpathia to reach the Titanic's location. By the time it arrived at 4 a.m., the Titanic had already sunk. All that was left were lifeboats filled with cold, frightened people. The crew of the Carpathia worked hard to pull survivors out of the boats and onto the ship. Some people were too weak to climb, so sailors carefully lifted them up. Survivors were given blankets, warm food, and medical care. Many were in shock and could barely speak. Others cried for their loved ones who were lost in the disaster. One crew member, Seaman James Bissett, later said that survivors looked cold and half dead when they were brought on board. Another crew member, Steward John Hart, remembered seeing women crying for their missing husbands and children shivering from the freezing air. The Carpathia's crew did everything they could to help. By 8:30 a.m., all 705 survivors had been rescued. Captain Rostron gave the order to turn back toward New York, where the survivors would be safe. The passengers of the Carpathia helped in any way they could, giving away coats and comforting those who had lost family members. The ship sailed carefully through the ice-covered waters, making sure to avoid the same danger that had sunk the Titanic. When the Carpathia reached New York on April 18th, a huge crowd was waiting at the dock. Families and reporters stood in the rain, hoping to see the survivors. Some cheered when they saw their loved ones. Others cried when they learned that family members had not made it. The world was shocked by the Titanic's sinking, but they were grateful for the bravery of the Carpathia's crew. Captain Rostron and his team were praised as heroes. He later received medals and awards for his quick thinking and courage. The Carpathia had saved every survivor who had made it into a lifeboat, giving them a second chance at life. Even though the Titanic story is tragic, the Carpathia's rescue shows the power of kindness, bravery, and never giving up on helping others.